Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Hanford Advisory Board meeting. My name is Mike Birkenweil. I am the Deputy Designated Federal Officer for the Hanford site. As a reminder, this meeting will be conducted in accordance with the requirements of the Federal Advisory Committee Act. The advisory committees have played an important role in shaping the programs and policies of the federal government. I think that goes back to the days of George Washington, if I recall correctly. The Hanford Advisory Board's role is to provide policy-level advice and recommendations concerning EM site-specific issues such as cleanup activities and environmental restoration, waste and nuclear materials management and disposition, excess facilities, future land use and long-term stewardship, risk management, communications, and outreach. I appreciate your attendance today, and I look forward to the Hanford Advisory Board's development and submission of constructive, actionable policy-level advice on the Hanford cleanup. Thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. A few housekeeping things to let you know. We record all HAB meetings, full board meetings, and committee meetings. Those recordings do get posted on the hanford.gov website. So to let you know that we are being recorded today. For sign-in, if you are here in person, we would love to collect your autograph over here on the sign-in table off to my left, your right. If you're online with us, if you would please type your name and your affiliation in the chat. That's our virtual sign-in sheet for folks who are joining us online. We're experimenting with something this morning that hopefully will do a better job of the audio for our online participants, because yesterday was kind of rough for you. So we're trying to make that better. Restrooms are out in the hallway to the back side of the room. You sort of wander around that way. Are there other housekeeping things that we need to know, need to do? I'll let Susan go over the revised plan for the agenda today. It's right there. Right there.
Good morning. Okay, so since we had such an efficient meeting yesterday and we got so much good work done, we're kind of juggling things up a little bit so that, the ideal, if we can be as efficient today as we were yesterday, we could possibly get out of here earlier. The back end is kind of fluid right now, depending on how efficient we are. So we're going to continue on with the opening section, and then we will move into the HAB MOU and membership nomination process by the agency staff that as currently scheduled. Then, because we eliminated the EM SSAB recommendation and approved it yesterday, we will then slot in the cleanup priorities advice and hopefully get that blessed to move on to the agencies. Somewhere around there, we will have a break. And that's kind of floating. So we're hanging there. And then at approximately 10:45, we will go into the HAB operating ground rules discussion. And ideally, we will have 2/3 of the membership available to say, good to move forward, good to fine tune it, edit it, clean it up, whatever, and then shoot it to headquarters that we can live with it. Then at 11:15, we have a hard stop for public comment. Then this is where it gets a little bit more fluid. We can, at 11:30-ish, we can have lunch. Did we hear back from the tribal?
We're still waiting.
Okay, so Gary Younger, has reached out to see if the tribal program manager, who is to speak with us right now at 1 p.m., if that individual can arrive early. We're still waiting to hear back. And so if right now it's scheduled for 1 p.m. And then 2 p.m.-ish, we have a break. And then we have a contingency slot for if we have to continue talking about the operating ground rules. Hopefully we don't need to. But, we've got time there because you never know. And we want to make sure everybody has opportunities to feel comfortable with the document. Then approximately 2:45 right now is board business. And that will be a variety of items. Like, it depends on how much time we have and where we're at. That may be committee reports. It may, Todd has, Myers was down at WIP. He would like to kind of give a short discussion about his experience touring WIP. And just, I want to hear from you guys. And then at about 3 p.m., we are scheduled to adjourn, if not earlier. So this is, I really appreciate your support and your cooperation and your get it done kind of focus. Let's see how good we can be today, how efficient, and how we can meet the site's needs by putting some good stuff done. Any questions? Okay, everybody's working on their second cup of coffee like me. Okay, so did you want to? Lorraine, how did the event go? I'm sorry I missed it. Do you want to? We really appreciate you doing it. Oops.
Good morning, everyone. Well, it went very well. We had some of our elected officials that joined us, and we really appreciated the performance from some of our tribal youth. They're called the Swan Dancers, and the food. I have to really appreciate my staff because as we were meeting here, they were running around yesterday getting everything ready, and so hopefully, everyone enjoyed the event in the evening, and I'm just appreciative that you were able to join us. And we hope to do it again. If we had more time, we had other tours that, are available as well. We have our tribal aviary and our sturgeon projects. So we've, been coordinating with those two programs since last year to actually provide opportunities for different work groups to come through and tour and spend time with us. So I thought it went very well, and yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed the evening. So hope everyone else did. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Good morning, Luann.
Good morning. I just want to provide a reflection on behalf of being a HAB member. It was an incredible experience. Welcoming, enriching, informative, just what a blessing to be there. So thank everyone who had a part in putting that together. It was just a gift.
Does anyone have any announcements that they would like to for the group? I don't, Mike. All right, then I guess we're ready to move into our first item, HAB MOU and membership nomination process. Mr. Ryan.
Thanks, Susan. And I'll tag team this with Gary today, and I think Davian might be online if I'm not mistaken. He can join in if he has any perspective. So there are a couple TPA HAB related documents that we've also been working to align over the last year or so to align with the current work that we've been doing, and one of them was the HAB MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that was last updated 2008. And we want to clarify that when we talk about updating the MOU, this is just an administrative update. So we're largely just looking at the current MOU actually was published with the wrong number. It says that 31 members, and that was supposed to be 32. But as you are all aware, there were 6 public at large members added back in 2020 or 2021. So the agencies are working to update the HAB MOU to reflect the correct number, 38, and that should also, that would update the quorum issues we've been having. And then there's just a couple of very minor typos that managed to make their way onto the 2008 version. When I say minor, I think there's like a little extra word or letter or something on it. So we're just working to update those simple updates. And not sure on the exact timeline. I think our goal is to get that finalized by the next, the next October 1st, the next fiscal year for the HAB, along with the other, the OGR and all the other work so we're trying to align everything to go together. The other document that we've been working to update has been the Hanford Advisory Board membership nomination and appointment process. This is a document that already exists. It is on the Hanford website. And I can let Gary take over and talk maybe a little bit about what it is and some of the background. And then I could, we can then, the two of us can talk about the major kind of changes and updates that the agencies have worked on over the last year on this document. Gary?
Thank you, Ryan. The process that had been on the website is something that we followed for most of the past several years. And there were some things that were outdated on that based on some recent additional guidance out of headquarters and some of the realities that we were facing with the board. So in a very collaborative manner, Ecology, DOE, and EPA worked together to bring that document up to reflect today's realities, much like we're doing a lot of the other documents that the board is working on. It was done in a very collaborative manner, and we'll be posting that here soon. I think some of the main differences is that there is we're putting in there the need to consider diversity as we are working with membership packages, trying to encourage organizations to consider that as you're nominating folks. And there was also mention in there of term limits, which hadn't been in there previously, and more of a discussion on term limit exceptions, which is following along with DOE guidelines, things like that. Ryan, did I pretty much hit the high points?
I think you did. The major updates, like you said, we obviously updated the whole document, but there was, some of the most notable updates was talking about the diversity kind of goals and demographics, reflecting what headquarters has been pursuing. And then the last page, we included a section on membership terms and appointments, and it details that term limits apply to all seats and all members, and it outlines the process for doing a term limit exception, what that process looks like, and that every seat needs to pursue that same process. But yeah, if anybody has any questions on this document or the HAB MOU updates, and maybe I can take a second and see if Davian has any input he would like to offer from EPA. I know you're online, Dave.
Yeah, good morning, folks, and thank you for that. First off, I just want to say how much I appreciate the work that Gary, Ryan, and Roberto did on particularly the recruitment document. They really put a lot of work into revising it and making it clear. And one other kind of key update I think that you put in, that you guys worked on, that you didn't mention, was the fact that you recognize, you put in some schedule and some milestones and some targets of where things have to happen in order to meet the appointment schedule that we have to live with, and the process at DOE headquarters. So I want to give credit to that it's much clearer in there. And like you said, just some fixing the number of seats in the MOU, and then I don't remember, there were just a couple of typos, and I don't remember what they were either, but very minor. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave. And I agree. And I just pulled up the MOU there. There was like a little extra A in there somewhere, and then like a little extra 2 that just didn't add anything. It actually just, was just improper kind of grammar stuff. So again, very minor update there. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, we're happy to take questions, on this document or the MOU update. But yeah, I want to thank Gary and Roberto and for the really good work that we've had working together on updating these documents.
Amber is online with us and has a question. Amber? There she is.
Hello. Hi. I'm just wondering, is this updated membership terms and appointments, is that available for the HAB to be able to review and provide input on?
The revised document was, it's online right now. Did we get it out with the HAB packet or did that come just a smidge late?
The updated nomination process document isn't published online yet. The old version is currently online of the document that's on the screen. Is that what you're talking about?
Right. So this new document is actually online in the
Oh, the packet.
in the
materials.
information for this meeting. So it's not standing in the where you would find it as a done document. It's in documents for this meeting. We can put that link in the chat for you, Amber.
Well, another thing to go along with that is that we recognize that as things evolve, this policy will also need to evolve. So we are willing to consider comments from the board.
Yeah, I'll add, if you guys look at the first page, we say this HAB membership nomination and appointment process shall be reviewed prior to the beginning of a recruitment cycle. So this is a document that we're going to aim to take a look at before each recruitment cycle every year.
And the recruitment cycle, remind us, is?
The official recruitment cycle, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, was, it's on the page. It was September 1st to October 31st. That's when the official kind of cycle is. That being said, we still do work on the tail end and then before the recruitment cycle starts as well, because we want to make sure that we're, kind of doing a really good, adequate outreach and engagement on board seats. But the official recruitment cycle is that time period I just covered.
All right, Jeff.
Thank you and good morning. With regard to term limits, can somebody who's rotated off the board for a few years come back and serve another term, or is it a lifetime prohibition?
Jeff, the intent under FACA is 6 years total for any particular member. Being as this is a public board, of course, just because you don't sit at the table doesn't mean you lose your voice. So what we do is we encourage folks who have termed out to remain engaged and involved and communicate with sitting members. And we hope to be able to maintain that level of engagement.
We did have members who have recently rolled off, dialing in yesterday, listening in. So we still hear from some.
Yeah, let me also add on a couple of things on the appointment process and things like that that I failed to mention earlier. We had also changed the dates on some of this to make it more convenient for nominating authorities. Previously, the recruitment timeframe was pretty much December and early January. And for a lot of things, a whole lot of business just really slows down and almost stops during that time period, and where people are trying to take time off for holidays or holiday events and things like that. So it was kind of a struggle at times for recruitment. So what we did was we moved the recruitment time span to start to coincide with September 1st, Labor Day-ish time frame. A lot of people are back from summer vacations, things like that, really getting geared in for that last push for the year end. And we found that we were able to get a lot of the nominations in easier and faster during that time frame. It also then gave us a little bit of time to chase whatever additional documents that we needed so that we could make our first deadlines with headquarters. We also worked very collaboratively in the process. We did some interviewing and discussion about potential members in a more deliberative fashion than we had done in the past, where it had just been one of the packets, I was the deciding factor. And that didn't work as well. So we made it a lot more collaborative, more deliberative. We included staff at the agencies, and then we took it to leadership of agencies to make sure we had complete buy-in with the folks who were involved. We kept the board in touch throughout. And I think we've got a far better, more collaborative process than we have had in the past. It's not perfect, which is why we will review before each season, which will start, September 1st. And we are willing to accept and consider ways to make it better.
And I'll add on real quick. It's also our intention to engage the board on the membership recruitment drive and to work with you guys and get your help and assistance as well. Not sure if my mic's working that well.
Tom,
Thanks. Just to clarify, when you're talking September, that's for the following year. So we're still looking at a full year of waiting to find out if your packet's approved.
That is correct.
Okay.
And what we did was we changed a lot of the dates that we had been working on back a couple of years ago. The recruitment, the term date was July 1st through June of the second year after. We changed that now to align with the federal government fiscal year. So it's now October 1st through the 2nd September. And then that's also kind of how we aligned with the recruiting process. So it takes a while to get through, and it's the recruiting process actually for the Department of Energy is nearly a year-long process. But as far recruitment, we've kind of narrowed that down into we think is a sweeter spot for folks. And hopefully we can get some help from on high to shrink that time schedule even more.
Okay.
But
Well,
I think
nice.
that at the local level, we've controlled as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, appreciate that. There's 26 steps, including the White House or something like that to get through. So
We're only at 47.
oh, nice.
In actuality, there are 15 formal steps, and we are at step 10.
Okay.
So things are looking good.
Yeah, and I wanted to just say that we still, ecology still has concerns over how long the process takes. It doesn't make a lot of sense for this process to take, a full year, because you get some people that you get them interested, September of this year, and then, by the time a year rolls around, they might have lost interest, or, life circumstances change and they can't help out anymore. So that's a concern. But it's like Gary said, we're working collaboratively, and this document just reflects kind of, we're trying to work within the reality we have, and we're still going to work to try and shorten that process to the best we can, but we're just kind of working with the constraints we have.
Okay. And my second point is that this seems like a significant change from when it was announced that term limits were starting to be enforced, and that the MOU seats that are named are still have to go through the diversity questionnaire and all of that. I'm just wondering how that's going to work with seats appointed by governments who maybe aren't as nimble as who they can put forward.
Yeah, so the process is the same for the seats. Gary can speak to the DOE part. DOE headquarters has the ultimate say. They'll take a look at the term limit exceptions and decide who to approve and who not to approve and stuff. But we just wanted to make sure that the process for term limit exceptions was equal for all seats.
other questions or comments? Rose?
Thank you. So I'm kind of curious. You said there's 47 steps total to get somebody through. Is that, is that what I heard you say?
Facetiously. The process is officially 15 steps,
Okay.
and
I
not
wrote-
all of
I
them
wrote
are at
that
this level.
down, Gary.
Rose was listening,
Now I gotta
Gary.
change it to 15.
There are 15 formal steps. And because it goes through several different offices at DC. And like I said, step 14 is when it finally hits the Secretary of Energy and says, okay, I approve this. Then step 15 is where the EM1 right now is currently Assistant Secretary or Senior Advisor, whatever his title is, Ike White, says, Brian Vance, do it. And then that's when we get out the appointment letters.
So at any one of these steps, somebody could be,
Well, the really good thing about what's
I guess I'm trying to figure out, what I'm trying to figure out is, I turn my application in as an example or it gets turned in as I'm nominated by an entity. And so at any step, that person's application could be declined. And is that right?
technically, yes.
Okay. What do you mean technically?
The reason
After
why
the 47 thing, I'm going to make you
the,
explain
the
that.
reason why I say technically is that there are so many different offices that get a chance to look at that. We've really been working on the process where last couple of years, we didn't lose anybody. The HAB did not lose anybody through the review process because of a lot of the upfront work that we did to look at applications, make sure that we've got the all the paperwork in place and the right boxes checked, things like that. The process, as things are going on right now, it's been up to headquarters for an informal review. And it came back and we answered some questions there. We made corrections. That's what I call step 9, where we make some corrections. If there's a form missing or whatever, we make sure that we get that in. Step 10, back at headquarters for them to do a more extensive review with additional paperwork. That's where we are now. The reason why I wasn't able to go to the event last night is because I was working on the packet, filling in some of those questions that needed to be taken care of so that I can make the next tight deadline for the next step. So throughout the process, I'm answering questions and the questions become uh, uh, happy to glad kind of things, minor questions. I am willing to say that probably the package as we submitted it will probably go through because of all this front end work.
Okay, that was the other part that I guess I was trying to figure out, at what point are we pretty confident that everything's gonna, go through? I mean, so what I'm hearing you say is that you guys at this end of things, really vet these pretty good and make sure everything's together and whatnot before you advance it up? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I'm reasonably confident that what has been sent up will be the final package.
Okay,
It's just got to go through the wickets where everybody shakes their head north and south.
all right.
We did lose one person and whose life changed. So they asked to withdraw and we were able to make those changes fairly quickly. But it's just different offices who are far and away from Hanford, taking a look at things and just where that process is now.
Yeah, and these are 2-year terms, right?
Yes.
It's a 2-year thing. So at the end of that 2 years, and a person wants to when they reapply, or I guess is what it would be, same hoops need to be jumped through okay, that's.
Yes, every time. The
Okay.
exception to the 2-year limit is when somebody asks for a term limit exception. So they've served more than 6 years. If headquarters approves it, it's for a 1-year term. And then that's it for that individual. And what that does is it gives organizations the time to find somebody else.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
any other questions?
I have 3 in queue. McClure, Rob, Davis, and Steve. McClure.
Yeah, so When this first came about, as far as the term limits and that process and sort of enforcing that part of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, we had some questions and I don't think the discussion went as far as it went, but I thought a lot more about it based on some experience on what I believe are other federal advisory committees. When I was working for Yakima Nation, working on Portland Harbor, there was a CAG, a community advisory group, and then also there was sort of a subcommittee. And so, Ryan, when you said we tried to make it the same for everyone, I want to be clear, I understand that, but at the same time, Yakima Nation has a very unique relationship with the federal government and also has different roles and responsibilities under CERCLA than anyone else would. And so I think there needs to be some more discussion on this because what was just said there really kind of triggered a lot of alarm bells that I don't think were thought through all the way. And I think you guys, especially to EPA, you should have offered consultation on this instead of just kind of doing it. So anyways, there's more concern that I don't think the whole group here needs to talk about from Yakima Nation's perspective on this that needs to be kind of discussed and brought to some sort of understanding. So just wanted to put that out there.
To talk to your concerns, McClure, and maybe Gary, you can expand on this. We do recognize, like Tom said, some of the MAU specified seats, such as the tribal organizations and the government organizations, have some more unique concerns. And Gary, you could maybe talk a little more on that.
Oh, we recognize the special relationship that we have with our tribal partners. And there are some things that we are looking at to try to alleviate some of those issues. We don't yet know what will happen there. So I don't want to say anything beyond that, but we recognize that that's a challenge that we need to get better at.
And please submit your comments to us if you want to after the meeting. This document, like I said, this isn't a finalized document yet. So if there are any super significant concerns that we can help address before this gets finalized, we could certainly look at those.
I think for EPA, you should consider offering consultation on this before you finalize it. That's, I think, a big thing that should be very clear. And then the other thing, I need to think more about it. I don't want to shoot from the hip, but I'm feeling a little bit, yeah, I need to think more before I say that one. So consultation, more discussion, and we can figure it out. We will find a way to make it work.
All right, I have Rob, Steve, and Mia. Rob.
Just being curious, I'm curious here that these reviewers in Washington, D.C., how is diversity quantified? And is diversity different here at Hanford than diversity in Washington, D.C.? The point is that we've got people that will control whether somebody gets on the board or not get on the board. And it's just unclear of what measures. How does one quantify it?
I'll take this, Rob. Thanks for the question. I think in the interest of correct information and also in the interest of time today, what I'd request is that you submit the questions regarding the process. The DOE will come back and make a presentation based upon those questions to help you better understand how that process works. As has been discussed here today and at previous meetings, we've had angst over the time it takes. Part of that also is on us here locally. It has been in the past due to a number of factors, some beyond our control, late submissions, people dropping off, and then us working to put folks back on and get the package submitted. So it would be very helpful if you would collectively submit some questions, and then I'd recommend that we put together a response and perhaps a briefing on that.
All right, so Steve's card has gone down. Is that right? I've got Mia and Tom. Mia.
Gary, I just have a question to clarify timing. So the most recent members that have been approved, myself included, we would be putting in our packet renewal this September because it would take a full year in order for that to be put through. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Tom and Richard.
So wanted to get some clarification on when constructive comments can be accepted for this document to be helpful for the agencies. And also just make a statement that it would be really good for the board to be able to get past this imposed crisis and get on with business.
Richard.
I,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
When do you want comments?
I think that if you could submit your comments or questions to Ruth within the next week or two, that would be helpful for me since I'm going to be taking the lead. And then I can work with Ruth, and Ruth, we can schedule a meeting to discuss.
And if you need more time than that, please let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Richard, your card went down.
well, I thought I was up. Anyway, as I brought up in the past, typically assignments to boards are made for elected officials at January. And so I'm not quite sure how we can ameliorate this going forward unless we, reach out to the various entities and we'll just not have elected officials, as an assignment. So, do individuals, but I guess the question comes down to is getting people to step up to a project, to a commitment a year before they're going to take the commitment just seems destined to fail. So, thank you.
If you have any insight in
We've got one person online on the phone. I want to make sure that anyone who is online with us has a chance to ask a question if they have something they want to add to the conversation. Anyone? Okay. It's quiet online right now. Lindsay.
And Ruth, I just wanted to close by saying, I hear you and I hear all of the concerns. And so if you could just submit those to Ruth so we can work on that process. This has been a big project and I've been working alongside with Gary, and it's a heavy lift and he's been working his tail off. And so he's doing what he can to make his way through the process for the board and for the success of the board. So, I encourage you to, submit those questions so we can do this together. Thank you.
All right. I've got cards up and Lorene and then Rose.
Thank you. And I do appreciate, I know the work that you've been doing on this, but I just feel that, from my perspective, as a part of this work group, when I first joined my very first year, I mean, we were in COVID. And so it feels like I never really got to participate the first 2 years because we didn't really meet. And, being new to the board just felt like, we were just kind of out there in limbo. But it is a concern for me as, coming from a tribal government entity because of the way that our structure is set up. And, if I'm to be termed out, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, I do have staff, but as a program manager for the tribe, it's any position that we take or that they appoint us to or, recommend us to participate in. This is one of the main work groups that, is very important to the Yakama Nation. And so, when I guess when we have different committee changes, within our structure, it does take, a lot to, have to regroup and to, re-educate. And so honestly, I think that, by the end of the end of this term limit for me, I'm going to feel like I'm just getting my wheels turning. And then unless there's an exception, and I think there should be, because we are one of the most diverse groups that should be participating without any restrictions, in my opinion. So I just wanted to share that because, from my perspective, it's very important in my position to maintain, that activity, to be able to report back to my committee and up my chain of command. So it makes it really difficult and concerning for me to know that, eventually I'm going to be kicked out. And, and I do feel for those that have, participated in the past and, have that longevity here. And, I think it's a disservice to the advisory board when you're losing those members that have that knowledge and can, make the continuation of the work that we're doing, a lot easier if they were fully participating. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
So I've got 2 people in queue, and then we need to wrap this up to move on to the next agenda item. So I've got Rose and Rob Parmalee. You've got the last word. Rose.
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick questions. First of all, I'm kind of curious, are there seats that are open on the board that were never filled the last term? Do we have open seats?
We have a couple of seats who
That are vacant.
currently do not have
Yeah, that are
members in
vacant.
them.
Yes, there are 3 seats where 2 of those groups are named and they chose to not submit a name. Then there's an interest seat that we've been having trouble filling.
Okay. And then the next question that I have with that is, what are the exceptions to your terming out? Because I know that there's people who've clearly gone way past their 3, their 6 years or their 3 terms, and yet they're still here. Yeah, there's one waving at me. No. And I'm just kind of wondering what technically the exceptions are. We didn't plan this, by the way. But what the exceptions are for that, I would be curious to know.
Tell you what, in the interest of time, why don't you submit that and we'll
Okay.
work on a full presentation at a later date.
Yeah. And with regards to the first, with that question, and actually both of these together, in hearing the report out from the national meeting and whatnot, and how there seems to be some issues getting people on the boards and keeping people on the boards and everything, I think we really need to consider what we're doing if we're kicking people off who want to participate and we end up leaving seats open because we can't fill those positions. I think we need to really reevaluate what we're doing, because we need people who want to participate to stay on this board. And if they've got institutional knowledge and stuff, so much the better. But the most important thing is not to have a bunch of vacant seats. And that's what I heard yesterday, that around the country, that some of these boards have got more than just a couple of vacant seats. And to me, that's concerning. So thank you.
Right. So we've got like a minute left and 2 people in queue. So Rob Parmalee and Amber, and then we really are going to cut it off.
Okay. Real quick, Lorraine brings up a couple of really good questions or concerns, and that's the 2-year limit. Is that a hard limit?
Let me clarify. The current term limits that USDOE headquarters is enforcing is 3 2-year terms, so 6 years total.
Okay. So but the 2-year limit for that period, that's a hard limit. I mean,
Yes,
be 3 years.
terms are 2 years.
I mean, okay, and that's set by DOE up high. Okay, because Lorraine really does bring up a good question based on my current experience. This first year is the learning experience on how we operate and all of the additional knowledge that I've been getting because of all of the different activities that are going on in Hanford. And so my usefulness to the board, to me, is not really going to start until that, my second year or whatever. So that's just my comment.
Okay. We're at the point where we need to move to the next agenda item. Amber, can your question be submitted with the others, or?
Well, I think it's important that we come back to this and submit some actual I think the board should consider, providing advice either back to local here or to national DOE on these terms, because I agree with everything different folks have been saying about the, it takes a while to get up to speed. And what Lorene has to say, I can't imagine, I just can't imagine that our tribal representatives should not be able to continue to serve in whatever capacity, on behalf of the tribe. So I think there's a lot more discussion here, and maybe we need to think about advising, all the way up to DOE headquarters on this. So thank you.
I know we need to wrap up. Let me offer some clarification. And feel free to chime in, Gary, since you're the one that puts the packets and the term limit exceptions together. Is, especially when you're looking at like the tribal governments, for example, and the other seats, as Gary works with you guys on your term limit exception letter, which goes to headquarters, and headquarters recognizes that there's cases like that where, we have the more special relationship, things are a little different, and headquarters is far more likely to approve the exception limit, the term limit exception for those kind of cases. And that's what I've heard from, headquarters over the last year. And that's what's been talked about in multiple HAB meetings. And I also want to reiterate, I also think the board also advised the agencies earlier this year on this very same issue. But Gary, if you have anything else to add, or Mike, but I do know we need to move on.
The most recent advice from the board on membership was advice 311 in March of 2022. Yeah. All right. Shifting gears to cleanup priorities advice. And Chris sends emails at very unusual hours. And we have a markup version. Let's fix this for you. See it? Get rid of that. Okay, Chris, do you want to talk through what your group did overnight?
Well, the group actually did it clustered around the table here yesterday before lunch. There were several comments yesterday, and the group addressed every one of those comments and incorporated it into the advice. And I'll just walk through and show you what the changes were, the additions to the advice for the various comments that were brought up during the meeting. So if you could scroll down to the bottom of the bullet list. Okay. From the third bullet up from the bottom, we added net present value after the flat funding. That was in response to a comment from Jeff, and that also will appear, as you'll see, in the table. There was an addition to the table about public outreach and engagement, and unfortunately, it occurred to me at 2:00 in the morning last night that we needed a bullet in the summary to represent that addition to the table, so that every bullet on here has a corresponding advice topic in the table. So I put in expand public outreach and engagement. All the bullets are terse relative to what's actually in the table. So that's consistent with the rest of the bullets. On page 2, Jan brought up, it'd be nice to in some way emphasize accelerated cleanup and indirect supporting activities. And we agreed that bolding them would be the way to go. And then also, instead of have been provided, we crossed out have and been and put are provided. So that was one of the suggestions at the group yesterday before lunch. If we go to the table now on page 4, AC-B, the 324 building, we added the words accelerate and complete waste determination and excavation of 300-296 beneath the 324 building. So that was in response to a comment from McClure and and Tom and McClure agreed on those words. So that's how they appear in that. On page 5, again, net present value appears after flat funding. And then the group agreed on the words for the new addition, ISAD. The board advises the TPA agencies to expand public outreach and engagement consistent with advice topic ISA-C and HAB advice 312, reference number 3. And that's what the group thought would be an appropriate way to address the comment that was brought up. So those are the changes that were made in response to the comment, and every comment that was brought up yesterday was addressed. And that's all I have.
I've got Rob and Jan. Rob.
Just quick, could you go to the 324 building, one on ACB? Determination could mean characterization, or which is more specific, and that's what they've been, our last presentation on the 324 building said, characterization. We got to know what it is before we can start digging it up. So is that what the determination is meaning here? Determine, or the determination of the classification of the waste coming out?
It's the second one.
It's the second one. So we should probably be more specific.
Rob's, McClure's, this was McClure.
Yeah, so we left it general determination because they are still characterizing and they will need to determine, and it's both. And so we didn't want to split hairs, and so we left it general is why we put what we did.
And this is the way to add the fewest amount of syllables.
In general, DOE is on a process to do this. We just wanted to have just, an extra word to help emphasize it in the accelerated cleanup. Because what we didn't want to give the impression was the HAB saying, go dig it up, but we were ignoring that they still are going through this process, I guess. So that's kind of why we added it. If there's some other verbiage you want to suggest, I think we're open to it, but we were just trying to keep it pretty simple and just kind of be done with it. Because I think there's a lot of work that's gone into this, and I didn't want this to get in the way of approving all that work.
Otherwise, we would just have to add some commas, and then we'd just have a lot of multisyllabic words with commas, and it gets less easy to read.
I hear you what you're saying, but determination in this environment we have here is people consider weirs are going to change the classification of things, and that's a determination that's going to come from on high. And so I don't want to confuse that with this.
That's sort of what this is.
All right. Dave Enan, can you help a little bit? I saw your comment in chat, but a lot of folks in the room aren't logged in to see chat.
Yeah, I just asked, could you put something in the background portion of this that says that waste determination includes both the characterization and the classification? Because like Rob said, I think classification is an important technical thing, whether it's high level, not high level, et cetera. And I don't want to lose that. But again, like you said, knowing overall what's there is important too. So I'm having determination here makes sense, but just clarifying that somewhere else that includes these other things might be good. That was my only suggestion.
Yeah, Chris just brought up a good suggestion, and after determination, add a parenthetical which says characterization and classification.
Or includes characterization and classification.
I suggest one word, designation, waste designation. It'll do both and clarify the difference.
McClure, with waste designation instead of waste determination still meet your need?
So it gives me pause because they've already got a waste management plan where they kind of said that they did that, but then we're kind of working through that didn't happen, and that's why. Um, I think what was added is fine. I'm a little bit nervous about designation, not because it's incorrect, but it's also leads to some potential answers that aren't also maybe useful either, so.
Well, I mean,
Let me
Excuse me, I
invite you to
didn't- I
hug
didn't
the
hear the
mic a little
last
bit
part.
so
Could
people
you-
can hear you.
Sorry. I'm more okay with what's on the screen right now than designation. And
well, in my past history, determination is determining whether it's waste or not waste.
And that's sort of where it is. I mean.
No,
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 it is
no,
waste.
no, we know it's bad.
It's not waste right now because it's in the soil.
There is
Once it's
a,
pulled out, it will be waste. Determining that it's waste when they pull it out is a no-brainer. Determining the designation of it as high-level waste or listed waste or the other characteristics, that is a separate true waste, et cetera.
we have stumbled into a very sticky issue where there is potential for this to be called secondary waste and they wouldn't even classify it. And that is our question. And it's a big question. And that's why we're sticking with what we said.
You're talking whether it's high-level, whether it's high-level waste or not.
Whether it's secondary waste or not, they wouldn't classify it if it's secondary waste. That's how it's been treated. It is, they would look at true and greater than class C and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But they wouldn't look at high level waste. There is
It
a
wouldn't be
lot here.
subject to- You want it to be, you want a weir. Is that what you're saying?
No, we're
Okay,
just wanting
so-
them to figure out their process.
So
It's-
Richard, could you live with the words that are up on the screen? Waste determination with the parenthetical?
Yeah, I can live with it. It's just silly.
Okay.
Okay.
I've got Jan and Q, and I saw cards go up and down. So you all decide if your cards were up and down, and we're going to go to Jan.
So I'm just looking at the table. So the table has 4 categories and I'm just hoping, I can't quite see it because the page breaks, but I think that I've seen some kind of verbiage put in between the different categories and I just want to make sure, maybe going in the other direction.
So up farther.
No, down further.
Oh, okay, because the 4 categories
I'm
are
talking
outlined
about
here.
I'm talking about the table,
Okay.
not the background. So could you show us the table?
So the
In
first,
fact, we were right there. Now keep going.
so the first section is tank waste cleanup. The second section is risk reduction. The third section is accelerated cleanup. And the fourth section is
Has the page break. So I
indirect
want to
and
see what's
supporting
beyond
activities.
that. And it seems like, now, please just scroll back down a little bit.
Okay.
She's saying, she's going up when I want you to go down.
Okay. We're going to go this way.
A little bit more, right
Okay.
there.
Oh.
Do you see all those lines in there? I can't read it from here, but it looks like it, if we're publishing the table, that the table should be, formatted as a table. And I just don't know what all those 3 or 4 lines are that seem to be outside
That's
of
a-
the table.
That's a header.
That's the header.
Okay, okay. It's on every page. All right, thank you.
Go back up.
So if that's the case, I think we want to make sure, and of course,
Is separated.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the good news is we have a technical editor on staff, and after you all do your magic wordsmithing, Josh gets it and makes all the page breaks make sense. So this yellow title called indirect supporting activities will actually be glued on to the words that
I
go
have to
with it.
say, my first alarm was that there was a page break right after the heading. But
Right.
now I see that it was the header after the heading on the table and that it'll be fixed before it's published.
That's right. That's the magic of Josh. Todd?
In determining the meaning of words, does the Department of Energy look to the discussion that we have here and the meeting minutes to determine our intent?
Kind of like the congressional record?
Something like that,
Something
yes.
like that?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, Gary. I don't know to the extent, historically, when we're considering advice, are we referring, I think the question is from Todd, are we referring back to the meeting minutes to actually determine the intent or relying solely on the content of the advice? That it?
If you're confused, like, what does this word mean?
Oh, I would say that what I know of my colleagues, if we're confused about what the word means, we reach back to the HAB and seek clarification on what the terminology means. Yeah. Todd, did that answer the question?
I have no one else in queue. Quorum check? 18. We have quorum.
Okay, first decision for the day. Does anybody have an issue to prevent, that would prevent this advice from being sent over to DOE and the rest, and the agencies? All good? Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so floating break.
People ready for that floating break? All right, let's take a, what, 15 minutes? 10 minutes? All right, 15,
10, 20?
10, and 15-minute break until 10:20.
To check in with people on the phone.
Okay.
Okay, so Tom, are you ready to start the discussion and the resolution?
Absolutely.
And as we then sidebar work the,
So while we're waiting for numbers, let's get back in the swing of things here. So we got on the screen, our team met last night, us proud few, to go through the RCR comments. And amazingly, there weren't a lot of substantive comments. There was some editing, some wordsmithing, and there were actually some duplications. So bad writing on my part, and I apologize. So let's go ahead and run through. First thing you're seeing on the screen is blue. It's not going to be blue because that's hard to print. We're going to swap the colors on this. So the white is blue and the blue is white, but I don't know how to do that overnight. So no, that's going to get fixed. So it should be in red line, and we can just go through point by point. There ended up being 65 or so little edits, but there's some duplication.
Let's see if we can't. Let's see how big we can go.
So first comments on this page, this bolded section has some acronyms that aren't defined in first use. So we will ask our technical editor to add those in post-processing. Okay, this revisions history section, there's a bit of a quandary. We have one commenter who wanted us to remove the revision history and the names, and another who wanted us to list the older versions of the documents. So I think it makes sense to say who approved the current version. And so I added the extra line that says it reflects a revision of the ones that were dated 2008. And then as this gets revised again, we'll add more lines to that. So I've sort of tried to accommodate both commenting groups. Any discussion on this?
I personally would remove the names, but leave the titles.
Okay.
Is a cleaner way of doing it. It's
because there isn't a signature page on this document, I don't think. So if we add a signature page, that would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe add a signature page and that way, yeah. We'll keep the revision history, but not the approval history.
Right.
Okay. So we did a couple wordsmithing things. We changed involved to engage. We added the fact that it's Hanford's historic nuclear production activities. So there was a question, the overburdening committee process with agency staff participation seemed a little verbose and hard to understand. So we changed it to impeding committee actions. So the agencies will attend committee subcommittee hearings in order to be responsive to committee needs without impeding committee actions. And here, committee is the HAB. It's because we're an EMSSAB committee. We also had a new bullet added that was present information on the status of cleanup activities to enable the committee to provide actionable policy advice. We changed involved with to and. We added that they're going to be providing some context. And then throughout the document, I removed the words or recommendations because recommendations are what the EMSSAB board writes and we write advice. So just disambiguating the high level board advice versus our advice. Okay. So you'll see some recommendations going away.
Okay. That'd be 21. Cool. All right.
So
Here
more
we go.
recommendations going away.
Here we go.
We mentioned that the TPA agencies not only collaborate on the appointment of the committee members, but also the approval. I think that's right. Even though DOE headquarters has the final say so, the other agencies do have collaboration. Yep. Okay. We noticed that a couple of people noticed that the chair and vice chair was not listed that they serve as the chair of board meetings. So we added that, meetings and functions. There was a question about the removal of officers, and that subcommittee there was a carryover and from our editing process. It should have been from the executive subcommittee. So the EIC, if someone wants to remove the chair or vice chair, they bring it to the EIC. The EIC would then recommend to the TPA agencies and the board that process happen. Not that we ever want to see that happen, but it's there. So the committee members section, I was noted that there was, it was jumping between committee members as the committee and committee members as individuals. So I just reorganized these. So all the individual committee member responsibilities are first, and then the group committee member responsibilities are second. And some verb tense to be more active in this section. So it's all the same words, they're just reorganized. So we could blast through this green section.
Okay, we're blasting through green.
So we also added, actually, when you're reviewing, evaluating, and commenting on Hanford documents, we're preparing for committee meetings by doing that. So you come to the board meeting prepared, you've read the packets, you've read the information that's provided as an update. So you're ready to be an engaged participant and somewhat knowledgeable on the topic if you can. All right.
And so these strikeouts are because you
Because I
reordered the
reordered,
stuff.
yeah, that's all
Okay.
still there, it's just in a different order.
Okay, I just don't want people to be confused. So the strikeouts again here are because it's been reordered, not because the concepts went away.
Okay, the facilitation staff, we added there to assist members in obtaining requested information necessary to support committee activities. And there is a comment that there needed to be more information on what the facilitation staff does. We struggled with this when we were writing the document because the facilitation staff is under contract with DOE. And we don't really tell DOE what's in that contract. So it's sort of cart and horse here. If DOE is approving something that then they're writing a contract on that's slightly different, then so we kept it very high level here so that the lawyers don't get mad at us with the contract. There was a comment that there was a may here, that committee members may abstain from determination of consensus. I changed that to they will abstain from determination of consensus if they have a conflict of interest, and they may abstain from consensus if they have the other things. So if it's not part of the mission or the role of the important organization, or for other reasons they may choose, you don't have to. But if you have a conflict of interest, you have to abstain from consensus. So meeting decorum, it was noted that there actually was no discussion of meeting decorum in the meeting decorum section. So we added that it's our responsibility to ensure that the rules are followed and that discussions in the meeting are conducted in a respectful manner. So that's our meeting decorum. We removed task forces from a lot of the discussion because the last task force was the tank waste task force, which was 2000 single digits 2000s. And if we need to add one, we can add one later. But it was just confusing and added an extra level of bureaucracy that we don't really do anymore. We added that the facilitation staff is allowed at the executive committee meetings because they're there. And we changed it from a representative to the TP agencies to representatives of the TP agencies, just in case they want to bring more than one person. There's still a couple citations that need to get fixed in post-processing, and that's that highlight there. And then just wordsmithing, upon adoption, previous operating ground rules are superseded instead of all the other bylaws and procedures. And that's erroneous capitalization on previous. I think that might be it.
Just being sure.
Acronyms and definitions. There's one definition down at the bottom. The CMO right there on line 424. We need to define that. I don't know what it is. Yeah, there.
Oh, okay. You already said it, so.
Anybody know what CMO is? Feds?
I believe it to be Committee Management Office. It's within DOE, high up in the clouds.
Okay. I think that's all the edits we had.
Hey, Raj.
Oh, one other question that was in the comments that we got passed through because we're in a tight view. We discussed the board was found chartered in 1994, back up in the very beginning. And someone suggested that we cite the convening report. I could go either way on it, but does it seem like the convening report is a document that we want to cite for headquarters, or do we just keep it as history? That's a good point for discussion amongst ourselves.
Mike.
Mr. Birkenbauer.
Just a quick question. So is that convening report referenced in the body of the document?
No, it would just be a resource for people who wanted to look at the 1994 process that's discussed in the background.
What's the header on this page? Okay, so it's not an applicable law, regulation, order, or policy.
Yeah, it would be cited way up top, not in this section.
Right. So do you have a reference? Is there, I can't recall, is there a references section in the document? Because typically in a
No.
document structure like this, where you reference a document, it shows up as in the reference section.
I don't think we do. I think there's footnotes as we go.
Yeah. So if you want to keep it, it definitely doesn't fit here. The suggestion would be to figure out where you want to put it.
Ruth, can you scroll up to the background section?
My question is whether there is a bibliography or, at the end,
I don't think there is.
because that would be the place to put it, even if you don't make reference
Yeah,
to
so
it.
right here, the first sentence on line 25. Committee was first convened by TPA agreement agencies in 1994. And then we would put in a footnote to cite the convening report. Yes. We want to do that? All right, let's do that.
Tom, is that the only document that you referenced that's not related to that it's not a law, rule, regulation, and order, or are there others?
There were.
You don't have to answer it right now. I just offer for your
I
consideration that
think that's the only one.
if there are others, either take your footnote approach or add a reference section for those as appropriate.
Yeah.
There was one other, it was the communication plan that you had highlighted in yellow. and
TPA
It's already a footnote.
But yeah, but that's also illegal. The TPA communication plan is a legal document, isn't it?
It's a piece of the TPA.
Are you
isn't
talking
it?
about the public involvement?
Yeah,
plan?
that.
Yes, that's it.
I'd have to double check that that's referenced in this. It's not a actual, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's a legal
So-
document, but
So
it
yeah,
might
there'll be
be.
two non-legal documents that are cited. So I don't know if we need a full-blown bibliography for that. All right, well, that was all of the comments that we received on this document. So, and none of them were sort of contentious deal breakers, in my opinion, but.
Tom Galiotto, I know you're on the phone and I have you in queue. I want to make sure we check with our folks on the phone. Because I can't see you waving at us if you want to say something. Do you have thoughts?
No, I think the changes just verbally that I've heard Tom, Cecilia go through sounded reasonable to me, and I have no other comments.
Right.
Anyone in the room have any comments, questions, need for clarification? Any of the above, all of the above? Rose?
So I'm just curious how often this is looked at and is updated and or changed. I'm seeing some dates here, so it looks like it's been a while. Is there, that would be the only thing that I guess that I would kind of like to see with regards to this is some kind of regularity on being able to take a look at it. For Lorraine and I, we were just kind of talking that, we're really just kind of getting our feet wet, and just digging in, and a lot of other new members are too. I mean, what I would look at today and what I may have, in 3 years or whatever could feasibly be totally different after I've kind of worked with the group a little bit more and had a little bit better, more understanding. So anyway, is there anything regular that is?
Yes.
Okay.
So the last time this was updated was 2008. And in the document that we're updating, it says that it was an annual review. We hadn't done that. We also acknowledge that at any given time, a board member can propose a change. And like Sue did here, so if there's a paragraph that's rubbing you wrong, we can change that in the future. I would move that when we have the leadership workshop, we should have an agenda item that says, are there any changes that I've identified for the operating ground rules? And that way we can check off that annual reevaluation of it. But yeah, it is supposed to be a living document with the understanding that it does have to go through headquarters. So we don't want to be peppering them every year.
Thank you, because I mean, like I say, I think that especially for new members, really trying to get a feel for how we operate. For me to come up with a comment right now is like, I don't, I don't understand a lot of stuff. I'll know more in a couple of years probably. So thank you.
And as Tom said yesterday, the next step that we're working on is going to be the more kind of a variation on desktop procedures. We haven't figured out what we're going to call them yet, but that's more the how to have a meeting, how, just the to proceduralize and institutionalize that knowledge. So this is the higher level document. Like I said, it's the commitment to headquarters that we need, that lays out the ground rules on who does what. So, but very good point, Rose. We kind of all had that same experience last year going, wow, this thing hasn't been touched in a really long time.
15 years is probably too long.
I don't have anybody in queue at the moment.
So are we ready to proceed to a vote? All right, remember, we need 21 yeses.
So if you are online with us, I need you to type in the chat your yes or no. Tom Galeotto, I'm going to put you on the spot because you were on phone only. We have 2 people on the phone. And then we'll check around the room as well. Lacey, do you want to do that, or do you want us just to go through, call the roll?
I call the roll, make it simple.
Okay, so, all right.
Ruth, for Denise, I'm here.
Yes. Oh, there you are.
For
Sorry.
Denise, she's not going to be able to unmute because she's at work, so she will be typing in the chat.
Okay, typing in the chat. Okay. Okay. All right. Benton County. Oh, Alphonse, yes? Question.
Yeah, how do we know who's online?
I'm going to go through the list of seats on the board and call out the seat, and then whoever's representing that seat can tell me yes or no. So if they're online, they'll speak up online. And if you're in the room, I will hear from you as well. If you have both your primary and alternate present, either in the room or online, usually it's the primary that gets to cast the vote. So I'm hoping you agree if there are both of you here, because I will look to your primary. Michelle's going to do in the chat. Okay. So nag me when we get to that point. All right, here we go. Benton County, I don't believe Pam is here. She's in Spain. Okay. Ben Franklin Council of Governments, that's Michelle. She's on chat. She's going to go for chat. Okay. Rob Davis, City of Pasco. City of Richland, Robert Thompson. Here. Okay. Richard Bloom, City of West Richland.
I'm technically the alternate, but I am the representative today.
At this meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Grant and Franklin counties, Steve. Trideck, Tom Galeotto, you're on the phone with us.
Yes, I hope I'm unmuted, and I would vote yes.
Yes, I heard you. Thank you. Hamtech, Becky or Jeff? Hanford Challenge, Mia.
Yes.
Non-union, non-management employees, Jacob or Leslie? Non-union, non-management, Rob or Tracy? Rob? Richland Rod and Gun Club, Jean or Paul? Columbia Riverkeeper, Jessica? Heart of America, Amber or Alfonso? I don't think Amber's online anymore.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm here. Yes.
Oh, you are here. I'm sorry. League of Women Voters, Jan.
Yes.
Citizens for a Clean Eastern Washington, Denise is online. And she said yes. She said yes in chat. Okay. Washington Policy Center. Yes.
Good dramatic.
Ha! No doubt about his vote. Ben Franklin Health District, Dan Strom was online. Dan, are you still online? He's not online. Okay. Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, Aaron, Mason, or Toby? Nez Perce. Christy, are you online with us still? Pardon? Christy? Oh, doesn't look like she's online at the moment. Yakima Nation. Oregon Hanford Cleanup Board, Jeff. Oregon Department of Energy.
Yes.
University of Washington, Shannon or Jessica? Washington State, Alan or Michael? Susan, public at large, this is the public at large. Susan Coleman.
Yes.
Larry Haler. Chris Sutton. Tamia Welsh. Martin Valadez. Esteban Ortiz. Loanne Ayers.
Yeah.
And Timothy Kovas.
Yes.
Okay, now let's see if I can count. Would you double count? It's this last column. That's what I counted. He did?
Yeah, Dan's term is coming on right now.
Okay. We're at 19 yeses. That would be the current. Right, so we have Michelle.
So Dan and Christy were on.
Yeah, when we said we had 21, we had Dan and Christy on. Okay. My call sheet is with somebody. It's not here, so hopefully it's going to good use. Mia's got it. Okay. I usually don't let phone numbers out. I guard your phone numbers. If someone asks for it, I will call you and say, may I give your number out? All right. Pardon? You have phone numbers in your binder? Yeah, yeah. I'm just careful about keeping those numbers inside the clubhouse and not outside the clubhouse, if you will. Tom's on the phone. Galliotto's on the phone, so we're good with TRIDAC.
Anybody knows Larry Haler?
Yeah, Larry's just going straight to voicemail. Yes. Oh, thank you. Alphonse, what's on your mind?
You have 19, is that where you're at? Or-
Correct.
Okay,
And we need 21.
okay. Will this vote be retaken at a later time today, or how does this work?
We so rarely vote that that is not as
That we're-
easy.
that we're trying to, if we can get, we're trying to connect with 2 more people.
We just got Dan.
Okay.
We've got Dan.
So it's kind of we're going to, we've got 15 minutes until we hit the hard stop for public comment. We're trying to connect with those 1 more person,
Literally.
literally.
Okay.
Because let's not do another vote. Let's, we're so close. So who,
Um, yeah. So in terms of HAB process, the consensus work that you do is based on our quorum number, which is 16. The reason this is 21 is it's a 2/3 vote. And those words, 2/3 vote, are in your current operating ground rules. So that's why this is a little different than how you adopted the advice just a few minutes ago. In the event that's confusing for our new folks, the board rarely votes. It's usually leadership stuff that you vote on. Yeah, Luann.
If I recall Robert's rules correctly, since this is a vote, we can table the motion until the end of the meeting, and that gives you more time so the end of the meeting to get the last 1 vote. Am I remembering correctly?
Right. We don't use Robert. Yeah.
You don't close the motion.
we technically do not use Robert's Rules of Order. We don't operate under it, but
I love the idea.
That's a good one to go by.
exactly.
I
And
love the
then
idea.
I'm going to say as the chair, I'm okay with it as long as, and I'm going to ask the agencies, do you have any issue?
Yeah, in this regard, it's your meeting, you're following your procedures. I don't have a perspective on that. You've got how much time till your hard break for public comment?
15 minutes.
Yeah, so if you've got something that you want to put in 15 minutes that's on our agenda, I don't have an issue with that as the agenda approver. You keep going, or you could break. Up to you, but
The whip up.
Oh, Todd. Okay, Todd Myers just recently had the opportunity to tour WIP. And he had asked for a few minutes to do his, to do a show and tell.
It's very short. It's been a long time since I've done show and tell, so I'm going to do show and tell. So I was in New Mexico for a lecture, and so I went to the WIP. The WIP is the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant in Carlsbad. I asked how long the WIP would be open and continuing to accept waste. It's for low-level transuranic waste. And I think they said 2080 or 2085, which makes me wonder why it's a pilot. But anyway, so some of the low-level waste from Hanford is scheduled to go there. Of particular interest to us is that they, like us, are getting new state permits to continue their activities. The comment period for those expired, I think, Tuesday. At least that was when I was there. That was the discussion. There's discussion about those permits and whether they will be continued. So we will have to pay attention to that. In terms of the show and tell, WIP itself is in a 250 million year old giant block of salt, where there was a former sea that evaporated and created this block of salt. It's great. It's non-permeable, so nothing can get in or out. And then you go down about a half a mile, and this is 250 million year old salt that they handed me. And then there's a little bit of clay, which they say is great because it absorbs some of the different changes. It's geologically stable. They don't get earthquakes like we do. And then basically the way that they do it is, if you're not familiar, I wasn't, is that when they build new areas to store the waste, they put the drums in, and then the roof collapses about 3 inches a year. And eventually they seal it off, and then that collapses and eventually entombs whatever is there. So that's the situation. There was a discussion yesterday about a new air vent that is being put in to increase the amount of air. That's because they have some diesel down there, and so the level of particulate, they need more filtration. Right now, they're working at a low level of level of work because they can't keep the air clean enough with more people in there. So that new vent will allow them to accelerate that and do some other things. So that's it. I just thought it was interesting to see, since we are scheduled to send some of the low-level transuranic waste there. And I understand what he told me is that Department of Energy is working on transferring some of the waste there in the upcoming years, not right now. So that's my report. If I've gotten any of that wrong, I certainly welcome corrections. It was a lot of information all at once, but it was definitely a worthwhile tour.
So I'll first start it with an anecdote. I went down to WIP in 2019, and I got there. It was a 10-hour trip to get there, and the conveyance was broken. The the coolant on the gears that braked the elevator that goes down 2,000 feet wasn't working. So we flew down there and didn't even get to go down the hole. But we saw the top and saw the true packs, which are the drum containers that ship this waste, and saw them unloading them. Really interesting stuff. More poignantly, we have an issue manager team working on transuranic waste advice. I owe the group a draft of that advice, but if you're interested in getting that draft and joining the IM team, we will be sponsoring it through RAP, River and Plateau Committee, in talking out through it on the June meeting, hopefully, and maybe bringing it to the board in August. So transuranics is definitely a timely topic.
Did she say yes? All right.
Who did we get?
Shannon Cram, University of Washington.
We-
You are, oh, she's coming on? Okay. I spoke too soon. She's on her way.
We're almost there.
That's right. No, she's outside of Duval, Washington, so she lives closer to me than anyone else. Physically. Your card is up, Steve.
Related to the committee and RAP, I thought it might be helpful if we have those sheets that we could circulate to help encourage people to put down what committees they would like to be a part of.
Ah, Josh, where are the committee sign-up sheets? He's waving over that way.
I was looking at the wrong table. I couldn't find them.
Guess what? Collecting autographs. So, when it comes to committees for the HAB, you can be an unofficial member of all the committees. If you are an official member of the committee, there are 3 things that come to you, if you will. 1, you vote for leadership of that committee. 2, you have a voice in the consensus of that committee when that committee says, yes, we want to send draft advice or other board products to the full board. And 3, you are eligible for travel reimbursement to that individual committee meeting. So you are welcome to participate and contribute to all committees, but you actually can't pull off being a member of every single one of the committees because that might impact your travel budget in a bad way. So think about the 2 committees that you most want to engage with, and you are welcome to participate in all of them. Does that make sense? Oh, Shannon voted in the day one, but we didn't vote on. Is she on yet? But we okay, so is she gonna get on? Can you just call, can she just call in like for a minute?
Put her on speaker and say.
Yeah.
Yeah, just call her.
The challenge is at the risk of being a process wonk, our current written how we do stuff instructions don't have a provision for proxy voting or not voting when we're like doing the vote. And the group may or may not choose to change that in the future, but right now we don't have that provision.
So stay tuned for that with that new document that Sue and I were talking about with the sort of best practices guide or HAB how-to.
Yeah, I just call it Fred, but Rose.
So this list that's going around, I just have a quick question about that. Being we're going to be changing the committees like in September, are we going to have to sign up for new?
These are the new committees.
These are the new
Thank
committees.
you. Okay,
So
never mind.
This list won't apply until October 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Richard?
I just want to encourage people to sign up for the LID committee, especially considering the date today.
Giving. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just put her up to the mic and have her do it. Yeah.
Let her, since she's the 21.
Yeah, no, I.
And the confetti and.
Say it now. Well, it's-
You put her on speaker.
Okay, now?
Okay, Shannon, do it.
Okay, yes, this is Shannon, University of Washington. I vote yes.
Thank you,
Oh.
everybody. I hope you appreciate how important your effort is. So, okay.
And Mia, who did Yo person's job on the phone, tracking people down. Thank you. Head wrangler. Yeah. Did you put that in roles of the vice chair, superhero or whatever? Yeah. Oh, where are we? 3 minutes to public comment. Gary, do we have any indication of when? Okay, we don't know yet. Okay. We don't know when Ms. Velasquez will be with us. You want to do your update in 3 minutes? 2 minutes, okay. 2-minute drill.
All right, RAP committee is going to be meeting sometime in June, and we're going to be talking about the river corridor, where the river corridor with 100K and 100N and WESIF. And we're going to be considering the transuranic advice potentially as soon as I get the draft out to the IM team. If you want to join the IM team, talk to me or Ruth. And the date to the RAP meeting is either June something single digit or June something double digit. We're still working on that.
Tom, I think it's June 6th.
Yeah, the calendar says June 6th. I think there was talk of moving it to the leadership workshop week if we can. No, it won't? Okay.
Right.
June 6th.
That's right. That was easy. That was easy. Almost there. The challenges of having a musician as the chair of the RAP committee. Okay. So. Got that, got that, got that. Josh, did we have anyone sign up for public comment today? Okay. So is there anyone here who, I've got you up next, Alfonso. Is there anyone either online with us or in the room who wishes to make public comment at this time? Anyone who would like to make public comment, let us know. I have nobody in queue and nobody signed up. It does not look like we have public comment today.
It's nice to have a member of the public.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Is there anything you wanted to say? I don't. Sorry. It is just so wonderful to have the public.
Can you hear me? I'm here because this is so very important. And I'm surprised that I'm the only person from the public here. I'd like to offer a possible explanation for that. And my potential explanation is a loss of trust in our officials to protect the Columbia River. There are no words to express the frustration that I feel. And I don't think I'm the only person who feels that way. For me, it would be a step forward if this advisory board at every meeting would document the seriousness of this problem and the criminality of polluting the Columbia River with radioactive waste. Thank you.
Ma'am, would you please share with us your name?
Sorry about that. My name is Jean Mendoza. I'm from White Swan in Yakima County.
Thank you.
Okay, so Gary, no word from. So, it's board business or lunch. I mean, we've got basically just over an hour and a half. Oh, sorry, Alfonso.
I cut him off so we could do public comment. So I owe you an apology and a recognition. You have the floor.
Just a quick questions on the papers going through. Public outreach and community action, I think is the first one on the top, or was when I got it. Isn't that the committee that we were all on, whether we signed up for it or not?
There's never been a committee that everybody automatically was on. In past years, the Public Involvement Committee was open for anyone to join, but you had to tell us that you wanted to be on the committee. So if you said, I want to be on the committee, the answer was yes, but it wasn't automatically, you weren't automatically a member of the committee. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And by signing up to this today, then you become a founding member of the new committee next year, a plank holder, so to speak.
Laureen.
Thank you. I just wanted to address Ms. Mendoza. Thank you for, your concern about the Columbia River and the statement that you made and the frustration that you have. I also share that with you. I grew up, my family is a treaty fishing family, and I grew up along the Columbia River. And through the Yakima Nation, I'll just share with the group that, our family, my children and I started a Yakima Nation business, and we were, trying to work with different individuals or other companies. And I have a relative that actually has provided product. And I'm not sure how active she is. I've kind of lost touch with her, through COVID, but we were attempting to work with USDA in fulfilling some of the, the bids for, the need for salmon. And my frustration, and it goes deep, it makes me very emotional that they won't even accept, salmon in the Columbia River. It has to be, what is the term? Alaska? Oh, oceanic. And I believe, strongly that the reason why they don't accept Columbia River salmon is because of the contamination. And Monday, we traveled to Tri-Cities with some of our elected officials and toured, some of the areas there along the river. And it was shared with me, coming home, that one of our tribal members actually witnessed along the Yakima River, between, I believe it's Benton City and Prosser. They were driving and they actually witnessed one of the farming areas there. They were actually pushing the topsoil into the river. And, you can only imagine, what is in that soil. And, same thing on Hanford, we're concerned about the soil. And so I really appreciate your comment, Ms. Mendoza, and bringing that forward, and, the seriousness and the main reason why we're here. And I'm sure there's many other community members that share that same, sentiment. And, so I'm glad that there are people that are, just as concerned and want to see that cleanup. And, and I will share also that I appreciate the work that McClure did, in bringing forth, some of the serious issues that, same thing at Hanford, that was not really required to be reported. Or, we're still looking back on the history of how the contaminants have spread throughout the Hanford area. And, it's the same with the Columbia. And for me, that waterway, sustains our people. So it is a serious concern. And, I just wanted to share that I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, I would like to just kind of add in something on the tail of this. And first off, Ms. Mendoza, I do appreciate your taking the time to come here. It is much appreciated. Next is that if you would like to consider joining the board in the future, we will have several public at large vacancies. So I encourage you to maintain contact with the board. All of our information is on hanford.gov outreach. And we will begin our next recruiting cycle in September. And there will be opportunities if you choose to want to serve at that point.
I just wanted to add that in as a recruiting plug, not only to you, Ms. Mendoza, you can share that with other folks, but also any members of the public who happen to be listening online as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we have an hour and 35 minutes until the tribal program manager is scheduled to be here to present to us. So how about if we take a lunch break and meet back here ready to hear what the DOE tribal program manager has to say? I'm personally looking forward to it. So,
1 o'clock.
yep.
Whenever you want to go, we're there.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. Are we ready for part 4? The Robs? Thank you. Okay, so welcome back. We now have the a presentation or discussion led by the DOE Tribal Program Manager. And so I'm turning over the mic.
Thank you very much. Everybody can hear me okay? Hello, I'm very grateful to be here today. My name is Amanda Velasquez, and I'm the Hanford Tribal Affairs Program Manager. When we get to June, I can actually officially call that my 1-year anniversary with DOE. So it's been a year getting up to speed, trying to get moved. I came from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it's been a year, and it's been I've enjoyed it. I look forward to years. So I kind of like to start off just to get to know me and kind of the experience that I have come in with. I grew up in northern New Mexico in a small town of Taos. And then from there, after I graduated from high school, went to the Coast Guard Academy and got a civil engineering degree and was on a ship and did some work for the Coast Guard. Got to do a lot of environmental, small agencies, so you got to do a lot of things, wore many hats on that. After I got out of the Coast Guard, I actually came up here to the Pacific Northwest, spent time in Spokane, enjoying the outdoors, doing like to fish, so doing the mastery of the fishing in Montana and Idaho. And then I'm going to graduate school, and from there, I actually got a certification and a master's degree, and I became a high school math, science, and physics teacher in Spokane, Washington, at University High School. And also during that time, I was also a volleyball coach, basketball coach, and track coach. So I kept myself busy. And on site, I kind of hustled REI to support my outdoor activities. But after that, I went back to work for the federal government, and I've been with federal government for about 20 years. I went back to work for the same unit of the Coast Guard, but as a civilian. So I worked up and down the coast in California, Oregon, and Washington. And that's really where I started getting my meat working with the tribes. Working for a small organization like that, I was the one-stop shop of everything, doing environmental compliance and environmental remediation. Big part of that, did the National Historic Preservation Act. I did the consultations for the agency for all the projects up and down the coast. And so it gave me a lot of opportunity to work with various tribes and to learn a lot more about how tribes work and perspectives, and then also coming from my perspective of where I grew up in New Mexico, very much a Native American and Spanish influence up there in the northern part of that state. So I'm very grateful to be here. I worked for different agencies. My previous agency was with the Army Corps of Engineers out of Albuquerque. Was the Tribal Partnership Program Manager. So I did a lot of watershed studies, drought resiliency studies, and flood control, those type of projects with them. So, and worked with the Pueblos up there and with Navajo Nation on several projects. So that experience also rolling into what I am currently working with now. So during one of my stops in one of my agencies, I worked for the Forest Service, and I had an opportunity to work with the Yakima Nation for a little bit and the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. So, and also some other projects with the Forest Service. So I did have experience, and then just some of the the Umatillas working on aids to navigation with the Coast Guard and getting some clearances and doing those type of projects. So that's my experience and where I kind of grew up and working with tribes and stuff like that. So I like to kind of now just talk about the role of Department of Energy and working with our 4 tribes here that have significant ties to the lands and their ancestral lands since time immemorial. So obviously Yakama Nation, we have the Confederate Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, we have the Nez Perce tribe, and we also work with the Wanapum, even though they are not a federally recognized tribe. But it's unique in so many ways versus working for other agencies where it's like project dependent. We're actually on a land base and focus on the base. So it's a really great experience. So for the federal government has a unique relationship with all federally recognized tribes. And so part of that, it's been based off of all 3 branches of government, right? Congress has passed laws of how we're supposed to work with the tribes and different things. Executive branch has given us different executive orders. And we also have the judicial system, with court cases as well too. So as federal agencies, we try to fulfill our trust responsibility to the best ability that we can. Yes, there's moments where we don't do well and we fail, but we try to, fix that and do right and be positive about what we're doing. And part of that, we have also the treaties that are part of that trust responsibilities as well. So part of that trust responsibility is our unique relationship is a government to government relationship, or sometimes you might hear it a nation to nation relationship. So basically, with the federally recognized tribes, we respect their sovereignty as a self-government. They all have different constitutions or different mechanisms for their own government. So we recognize that and we respect their government. And sometimes when I explain to people of how we work with them, it's kind of like the tribes in the states are at the same level. They're not below the state. They're not within the states. They're at the same level of the state with their sovereignty and their government. So we have that special responsibility and we work with them. And the biggest part is the communication piece with anything else, especially this group knows that communication is huge. So the government to government, there's 2 parts I consider. I'll break it down into 2. There's the big C consultation. And that's where really the nuts and bolts of where we build our partnership with the tribes. That's at our seniorship level at DOE and other agencies and with the tribal government, the councilmen's, board of trustees, executive committee chairmans. We work with them and it's important for Brian Vance to have a good relationship with them. And part of building that relationship, as you guys all know, is the trust, having good communication and being honest, especially when there's difficult conversations to have. We've got to be very apparent of what we're doing. So that's really the big C is really being informed. They need to be informed of what we're doing because these are their ancestral lands. So we got to respect that and let them know what's happening out on the landscape. And the second part of that, of the government to government, is really the nuts and bolts of it, meat and potatoes of the consultation. And that's really where a lot of the groundwork comes in. That's with the environmental compliance, remediation, and that comes with our federal laws. For example, the CERCLA is one of them. Also with the National Environmental Policy Act is kind of the umbrella of all the other ones. But really our work with Rose and McClure and Lorraine, and I'm not sure if Christy's on or somebody from CTYR, but we worked a lot with the National Historic Preservation Act. There's 2 sections in that act that really are the groundwork of our building our relationship with the tribes. Section 106, and that's the part where federal agencies, you have to look at both prehistoric, historic, cultural resources that if you're going to take an action, you better see what kind of impact that you're having on that. You got to find out what's eligible. So usually like for buildings, we think of some things that are 50 years and older. We have to see if they are eligible. There's certain criterias you have to weigh them against to see if they're eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. And it's the same thing with cultural resources. A lot of those ones, we just determine if they're eligible, and that kicks into the second section That's very important. Section 110. If we have those important resources under this jurisdiction of this act, we have to make sure that we maintain them and we don't let them get destroyed. Over time, we got to be the stewards of those resources. So that's the other part that we worked heavily with the tribes too, trying to protect these cultural resources on the landscape. And once again, it's their ancestral land. There's a lot of important pieces to it. And we think of just something hard, right? The landscape is huge. The watershed, there's many facets of that. It's just not just an object. There's very many facets and complexities to this. So that's really where we get our consultation from and working with the staff. And, we go to our leaders, the Rose and McClure go to their tribal council and their leaders to when we need to have decisions made. But the most important thing for us with our consultation and working with the tribes is making sure that they are aware and participating in that decision-making process, right? They need to let us know what impacts and how, and they might give us some other insights that we may have never looked at, a different way of looking at things. So that partnership is very important. The tribes are not our stakeholders, they're our partners. And we respect that in that government to government relationship. And one of the unique things, which is kind of nice with the Department of Energy versus other agencies, is under the Nuclear Waste Act, when we moved to the environmental cleanup, Congress actually authorized us to provide financial assistance to the tribes to allow them to participate. So if you look at all the work that's happening at Hanford, if the tribes didn't get that financial assistance, there's no way that they would have the expertise or the number of staff to be able to do that. So the financial assistance is really huge to bring them to the table. And we value their work and to be part of that. So it's great that we have that. We work with them similar to we have technical objectives, we have a scope, and then we do negotiations of what we're going to accomplish that year. But we give an opportunity and provide the tribes the ability to have the expertise at the table, whether that's through their staff or if they need to get contracts or different mechanisms. So I won't speak much more to that. But in general, that's it for how we work with the tribes. There's a lot of communication pieces. My job is to make sure overall that are the programs and the projects that are happening, that are making sure that there are venues where we're communicating that to the tribes and to their tribal leaders as well. So we have reoccurring meetings with them. Our section 106, I talk on the National Historic Preservation Act, every month they meet. They spend a few hours every day during those monthly meetings, excuse me. And then we have our tribal affairs meetings to catch other things that maybe not be talked in that group. And then other special meetings under CERCLA. Some of our program managers we have recurring. So I would say that overall with the staff level, we have great relationships with them. So I like to, Rose McClure, if you guys want anything to add to that of how we work together.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, I guess I can add a couple of things. We do meet once a month with basically it's all the tribes, and DOE Warren Hurley is the Cultural Resource Program Manager. And so we do meet on the third Wednesday of every month, discuss issues. We bring in speakers, whatever, we need to do to better understand projects and whatnot. And that's all done. And we've actually been meeting for this working group, I'm going to say, has really been established for since early 2000s. So this is really a very long ongoing working group, well established, and it's really helped us to be able to address issues, hopefully sometimes before they become too big issues, not always, but sometimes, being able to sit around the table and talk about those things. I do want to add one thing that Amanda did talk about, the Section 106 process, and she also talked about Section 110. But what she didn't say with regards to Section 110 is that the other part of Section 110 is identifying the resources. The federal agencies have an obligation under the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 110, to identify the resources that they have. And then once those resources are identified, then they need to protect them if they're eligible. And I'm going to be honest in saying that that is our downfall right now with Department of Energy, is in those identification efforts to actually get out and do appropriate Section 110. And I could go on and on about, the compliance with the Section 110 portion of the NHPA, but we are trying to work through that. The bottom line is we need more funding for cultural resources. Those are important, and we need more funding to identify them and to maintain them. And so we're obviously in constant negotiations for trying to get more money in that arena moving forward. But it is a long established working relationship, and we work on doing agreement documents. We have at any one time, we have usually more than one memorandum of agreement that we're working on in order to mitigate for adverse effects for some of the projects and activities that are happening out at Hanford. We're looking at doing some pragmatic agreements for maintenance type activities and such to try and streamline processes and whatnot. So we really do have a pretty solid working group where we are able to, I feel we've been able to accomplish a lot through the years. And but it's ongoing.
Thanks, Rose. Chrissy, I know you're online and I hate to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you want to add anything before we open the floor to the questions, and then I'll throw it to McClure.
Yes. I just want to say that we've been on we had a cooperative agreement since I think, what is it, 98? No, 99. I appreciate being on the HAB. I have been working on NRDA issues for the past 4 years, and so I just got back on cleanup issues. We just hired, we kind of went through a phase as well at the Nez Perce Tribe ERWM, where we lost, or we had several people retire our technical side. So there was pretty much just 3 of us in the office, and we were all NRDA. I appreciate everyone's views on listening to everyone's views. I think it helps us get a bigger idea of cleanup as well. It keeps us informed. We are bringing on 3 new technical people as well, so hopefully they'll be participating as well. Kermit Mankiller is our alternate as well. So I want to say that on consultation, it's more than just being informed. It's about being able to help a decision and cleanup process. We have a guidance document on consultation. We have a vision of how we see cleanup, and I would like to share those documents with everyone. We've had those for quite a while. And that's off right now.
Thank you. McClure, would you like to add a few comments?
I just wanted to add a couple things. So Rose works mainly on she works on all the things just like I do, but her background is more on cultural resources, where mine is more technical on the cleanup side. So one, I just wanted to appreciate Amanda for coming and kind of explaining the diverse things that DOE has to work through as a federal agency with tribes, and every tribe is different. So what you're hearing from Rose and I, or from Christy, every tribe has different priorities and things they're working on. But a couple other things that I think it just would be good for the HAB to be aware of from Yakama Nation's perspective is, one of the really big projects, and Christy mentioned, is the natural resource damage assessment, which is the other side of the Superfund cleanup law, which is basically you're trying to find a way to offset the injuries that have occurred to these public resources by restoration and either stopping the losses or doing projects to make up for those interim losses. So I'm currently serving as the HNRTC Trustee Council Chair. Don't get too excited. We just rotate. I lost the draw this year, I guess, so I have to serve as the chair. But also another thing that I think some of y'all may be aware of, but we also work at a national level as far as working with DOE and states at the State Tribal Government Working Group. And so we bring up certain issues from the Hanford site to the national level, but back to DOE headquarters. Currently, I'm also serving as the chair for the Waste Management Committee, which is a new committee that Stigwig has just started. Also, don't get excited. I got voluntold to do that rather than getting some sort of election or anything. But these are all elements of sort of trying to do the best to coordinate with DOE and our federal and state partners to get our perspectives heard, but also get understandings of how we feel federal law should be implemented, so we can, at the end of the day, hopefully be standing shoulder to shoulder on cleanup decisions and where things are going forward. That doesn't always happen, but that's still the goal. So anyways, I just wanted to throw those in there as well.
Thank you, McClure. I'd like to open it up. If there's any questions that we can answer.
Ryan, do you want to start?
Not a question. I just wanted to offer that we also have one of our staff members on who can talk about ecology and the state's work with the tribes if that's something of interest as well.
Do you want to go there? Amanda, do you want to go there, or do you want to go questions from the board?
Sorry about that. If we could go just a couple, just general touching on it, so we give some time for the board.
Sorry, Teresa, if you want to hop on, you can share a few of our thoughts.
Thanks, Ryan. So hi, I'm Teresa Howell. I'm with the Washington State Department of Ecology. Just wanted to share kind of the state's perspective on a few things. We've spent a lot of time over the past few years, I think, building a more robust relationship with Yakima Nation in particular, including both kind of formal monthly meetings to discuss emerging issues and building rapport during some more frequent, detailed technical discussions. And we're also beginning to do that same sort of process with the NESPERS, working on starting up those monthly meetings to make sure we're in communication on topics like permitting. And I think for the state, that's been a really important key to our success over the last few years. We hear the theme again and again that open, upfront communication is very important to moving our work forward at Hanford. And so keeping the tribal perspective at the forefront of our thinking as we make those decisions is a key component of how we're doing business. It's an ongoing process. I think, as McClure mentioned, there's a lot of kind of national movement as well that we're involved in. But we're always looking to improve those relationships and, really make sure that we are, not to again use McClure's words, but make sure that we're kind of standing hand in hand as we make decisions on cleanup.
Right, I've got Jeff and Chris and Rob Parmalee. Jeff.
Thank you, and thank you for coming today, Amanda, and giving us a briefing. If you could address a little bit future land use issues in terms of what's going to happen, especially to the river corridor and kind of the outside perimeter of the Hanford site. Is it going to end up under the management or jurisdiction of BLM, the tribes? Is part of it going to go back to the private sector in terms of agriculture? So if you could just give us a little bit of a vision and where you think things are headed for future land use. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, Jeff. So the big thing for DOE, we have our comprehensive land use management plan, and there's implementation plans underneath that. For example, a cultural resource management plan. There's also a biological resource management plan as well too. So there's different tiered plans within that we actually use for on the ground and in our work. So what I would say with that, with our current mission for cleanup, we still need to follow the CLUP is what we call it, the land use plan. So we need to make sure that we're in compliance with that at all times. And so there's lands that the land use have been identified, But as we get further down the road, those are conversations as we start getting closer. It's going to be still a far way out. But at that time, we'll definitely still be talking to the tribes to see what the future of those lands are and with the community as well too. So we're far down the road with that. We keep that in the back of our mind and making sure that we are complying with our comprehensive plan. And I know I wish I could say, in 5 years, we're going to do this, 10 years, just have a good timeline on that. But it really depends on the progress of the cleanup and within our policies and guidance and our directives that we have. So we are keeping a vision on that. And
So
once those lands.
To maybe make the question a little more
Okay.
pointed, is the vision that these outlying parts of the site will end up with the tribes or with the Bureau of Land Management?
At this point, we do not know that. We're not at that point to make that kind of decision right now. But we are communicating and working with the tribes on, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with the monument lands and within the river corridors, we finish the cleanups.
So let me make a suggestion. I'm going to pick on you, Jeff, and you might forgive me. Since Amanda doesn't know you, could you also introduce your name and what stakeholder group or organization you represent so she can get a flavor of the group?
Sure. Jeff Wyatt, and I'm with the Oregon Hanford Cleanup Board. So live in Portland and was recently appointed to the board. So please forgive my ignorance.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Chris, introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hello, I'm Chris Sutton. I'm a public at large, and I retired here after working 13 years at Hanford. I retired after working 13 years at Hanford and at the Fernald site before that, and several years at Sellafield over in England. And my question, both you and Rose used the term eligible and eligibility, I think, with respect to resources. And my question is, what constitutes eligible and eligibility? How is that determined?
So under the National Historic Preservation Act, the Secretary of Interior has certain standards and criterion. So right now, 4 criterion that we look at. So for example, I'll just say a structure. Let's say if this building over 50 years old, we'd have to see if it has ties to Yakima, like the importance. Is this important to how Yakima was developed, or is it important tied to somebody important within the community? Is it important to the development and the growth of Washington State? There's different criteria like that. If you look at just like DC, just some of those in Washington DC, all those monuments and stuff like that, or old structures is mostly what people think of when they think of on the National Historic Register. It really has to tie in to really on the national level, what importance did it have? The state also has their own historic register as well too, things that are important to the state that they want to preserve. It's either a building that's tied to somebody important, or is it a type of architecture that's important that needs to be preserved. That if it get, think of it as an endangered species to a certain degree, right? Where you're losing that type of architecture of that building and you want to preserve it. So something like that. And when we say eligible, there's a difference. There's a determination between the agency that, and it triggers has to do with funding, which we're talking about the section 110, the preservation of that. As agency, we have to preserve those resources. So, and that comes down to funding. There's some items that we do not, as different agencies, they might be eligible, but they do not get actually formally put on the National Register. There's a whole process to go through that to get things on the National Register. And sometimes agencies just choose not to do that. However, even though it's not on the register, if it is determined to be eligible, agencies consider it to be eligible. And so they still preserve that resource. There's different kind of triggers that I don't want to get into the actual technicals of that. But that's what we were saying eligible is, is it a resource that it's important to conserve based on this case, the federal, on what contributes to the fabric of America.
So is there a formal kind of flow chart, if then, starting from the lowest level, if this, then you go to that, if that, then you go to that, if no, you kick it out until you reach the end and
To
the
certain
end of the if thens, and now it's eligible.
To a certain degree, there's a lot of studies that get done. We hire people who are experts in history or architecture, depending on what it is. We work with the tribes to help us. And when we work with the tribes, there's information that we do not release. It's very private. And there's ways that we work around that. But basically, there is a format, and that's the Secretary of Interior is the one that keeps that. They call the Secretary of Interior the keeper of the light. But there is a form, you go through it, you make your pitch for it and say, hey, yeah, this is the reason why it's important. And then it goes up to a different agency in Washington, Secretary's office, and they determine whether it is significant to the fabric of America.
And there's 15 of them, right?
No, there's four ways. Correct me, Rose. I believe there's 4 criterion that you have to evaluate it on and give a good pitch on it. Documentation, buildings, certain type of photos. It's a long, arduous process, and that's why a lot of times agencies, if they know that it's eligible, but they won't put it actual on the register, but they know it's eligible, so they protect it.
Thank you.
I just want to add a couple of things to that. I've actually done the form before to get stuff listed on the National Register, but generally speaking, you don't, it is a long process. So in order to protect a site, you don't need to have it listed, as Amanda said. And for tribal properties, generally speaking, what we would do is we would evaluate those properties, and it goes through obviously the agency, the federal agency, and then it goes to the State Historic Preservation Office, to the SHPO's office. You've probably heard the about the SHPO before. And if they agree and say, yeah, we feel this is eligible, then that's all that's needed to treat that property as eligible. And the tribes, Yakama Nation does not list our properties on the National Register. We never list those properties because then they become part of a larger database, and we just don't believe in doing that. So when you hear that something is the eligibility of something or something being eligible, that just means that it's gone through a certain amount of the process. We know it's eligible. It's going to be treated as eligible, especially when it comes to traditional cultural properties. Those will never be listed on the National Register. That information is kept very tight. And Amanda doesn't even have access to that information, quite frankly. Warren Hurley has access to the information, and project managers don't have access to that information. It's highly confidential. What they need to know is, yes, your project will affect a property that is eligible, and we work from that standpoint because it is very confidential information. So you're not going to get a lot of information about it. But if you take something like, I'm going to use a quick example, like the White Bluffs Bank, that's eligible. That is a listing on the National Register, that the bank that's out there. And what that means is that there's certain criteria that fit with that. One of the things is that they have to maintain it so that it doesn't just crumble and fall apart. And so they recently, well, not recently, but within the last few years, went and did some rehab to that structure to maintain it because the roof did collapse. But the way they did it had to meet Secretary of Interior standards on how you would treat a historic property. And so that and the high school and any of the structures that were out there, which is not much, but Bergman's Warehouse, any of those things, they have to try and at least make sure that they don't just crumble and fall, because those are eligible and or listed on the National Register. I don't know if that helps or not, but
It does. Thanks.
Rob Parmalee.
Hello. Rob Parmalee. I'm the non-union, non-management employee representative. And with the understanding that you're fairly new to the position that you're in, Amanda, have you set any goals to be accomplished over the next, say, 3 years or 5 years? Have you been able to do that yet?
Yeah, so there's I work with my boss, Karen Lutz, with Site Stewardship Division. And overall, we do have some goals and accomplishments. And I think I'm at a place now to start actually honing in on those now that I have a better feel for the position. And those are something that will work within tribal affairs and some of the other meetings that we have with the tribes. But yes, we are going to be working on some goals and objectives coming down the future of how we can improve things because we always want to improve it. So just basic institutional stuff, how we do meetings, presentations, how we get information out to the tribes. Those are all goals and how we're trying to make sure that we're consistent and that we're getting things out. But yes, we will have those.
Will you publish those or will they be internal or how will you handle those?
That one I would have to find out if it's going to be just internal or if, but definitely be working with the tribes on that. And so that part of those, depending what is discussed, like some of the stuff that we talk about and we do, we don't release. It's just between us and the tribes. And even between us and each tribe, we have different things, right? Confidentiality. But I will look into that and get back to you on that and what we can do. I know under our key goals, we put some general stuff for tribal affairs in there. For example, just having better communication, meetings, set up recurring meetings and stuff like that. So real high level stuff I know has been released, but for the program, yes, I'm going to be working on some goals and objectives of how we can make sure that we're meeting the benchmark with the tribes.
Okay, thank you.
Dan Solitz is online with us. Dan, are you there?
So,
Okay, we'll check. Oh, there you are.
yeah, I'd actually put my hand up, but I didn't have anything to say.
Okay. Rob Davis, our Robs like to sit together.
I guess my questions are, first of all, we hear the term the trustees for our project. A little description of that. And then the second thing is that, is this all out of EM budget? And is the maintenance, is the work, is the reconstruction, is that a DOE budget funded item? And does it come from EM? And if it environmental management, or does it come from the other budgets in the Department of Energy? And Mike, you might feel part of that question if you know the answer.
Yeah, for that one, you talk about money, I don't feel comfortable about answering about money to make sure I don't land in the wrong spot. But in general, yes, a lot of our work does come under our environmental cleanup part of it. There's different pots of money, but on site, it does come from our cleanup funding for this. There's different parts of that too. I would say there's different pots of money in the sense of, for when we're trying to when we budget and prioritize that we need to do some work on these sites to make sure that we live to our federal obligation under the National Historic Preservation Act. But we set aside money and funding on that one. So we always try to look, 5 years ahead, and hopefully it's not a critical emergency where something's falling. It's like urgent, and that we're being good stewards and we know what's upcoming. So we budget that accordingly to which pocket of money that it goes into. But yes, under the overall environmental cleanup for our mission, that's where the money comes from. The trustees part of it, I'll let McClure talk more about since he's more involved with that. But when we say trustees, it's really with the NERDA piece of it. And it's the members that are actually sitting and part of that resource damage assessment.
Before he goes into the trustee stuff, I want to finish talking to what she said, what Amanda was saying. Any project that's going to have any potential to have an effect on cultural resources has to have the NHPA Section 106 process done, and it becomes part of the project budget, it doesn't matter if it's a DOE project, a Fish and Wildlife project, or Army Corps of Engineers project, if it has a federal nexus, then it has to have, they have to do the Section 106 process, and it just becomes part of that, the budget for that project. It's allocated as part of the project. So every project will have a cultural component to it, and it comes out of, it's an EM budget project, and then that's where the money comes to do the Section 106 process, the cultural work.
And Mike, is that out of the headquarters budget of EM, or is that out, are we competing with this for our $2.7 billion budget here?
Rob, I don't have any insight into that. I'd recommend that if the answer we're given today is incomplete, submit that and we can get an answer back.
Right, right. Because in like some of our advice, we could be including or highlighting the support of these programs as part of our advice, if we knew that we're sharing budget with this. So.
So this is what I understand, but obviously I don't work for DOE, but as I understand it, the funding for the tribes cooperative agreement comes out of PBS 201, which is sort of the general cleanup and compliance with CERCLA sort of things, because these are things you have to do under CERCLA to be in compliance with CERCLA, such as NHPA or the tribes response activities and that kind of stuff. So that's what I understand, and it could be different. So I would wait for DOE to give you an official answer on the trustee council. So there's a very separate part of the federal cleanup law, the CERCLA law, and I'm going to get my citations wrong, so I'm not going to try to give you them. But it is basically if you are a federal agency, state, and or tribe that either manages, owns, or has a resource that appertains to your government, then you are a trustee of it. And those are sort of the three things. And obviously there's some legal kind of gray area there. But we have Department of Energy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency, Washington State, Oregon, Nez Perce Tribe, CTUIR, and Yakima Nation as trustees on the site. And that is all because we fit under that definition that I sort of gave there. This stems from a lawsuit back in 2002 or 3, don't quote me on that date, where there was a challenge to try to get assessment costs for some of the area that was deleted off the national priorities list. And that went through a long process, and there was a settlement back in 2012 to agree to work together on a cooperative assessment, and we have been implementing that settlement ever since. I hope that's good enough, but if you have more questions, feel free to let me know.
Yeah, Rob, thanks again for the question. I just think that we have an opportunity here to answer it more completely. If you would please forward that question in through, Lindsay, do you want it to go to Ruth? Yeah, ink it down, send it to Ruth, and we can respond to it appropriately.
Rob Parmalee, do you have another question? That's the signal that I want a question. Do anyone online? I don't have anybody in the chat or in the queue online raising their hand.
I'd like to thank everybody. If there's no more questions, I just wanted the picture that's up there. That was a dinner that we had with the tribal leaders. The secretary wanted to meet with the tribal leaders back in August. So it was an opportunity. It was a great listening session for the secretary to better understand and get to know the tribal leaders that are been affected by Hanford. So it was a great opportunity, and that was a great photo to have that. So I just want to share that of the commitment from DOE, even from the leadership, even coming out through COVID. She did some virtual roundtables when she came in, but it's definitely, she has a lot of interest in making her commitments to the tribes. And thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda, for joining us. Appreciate it.
there's one more agenda item called board business. And Sue, how would you like to proceed?
Well, we've got 15 minutes approximately. Let's try and stay close to that. But first up, I would like to hear from the committee chairs. We haven't had a chance to do this in a while, and we didn't think we would be able to with the action-packed agenda we had. But if we could get a short, concise committee report for any of the committee chairs that haven't already put out the information elsewhere. So I'll kind of go down the road. Tom, Cecilia, you good? I'm just doing a check-in. I'm just going to do a check-in. Chris Sutton?
I'd just like to reiterate what I said yesterday. The last BCC committee meeting will be September 13th, and we'd like to have a couple presentations to kind of go out in style, things that would be very useful to not only the current BCC members, but to HAB members at the whole of the HAB members. So I've already put together a short spreadsheet of possible presentation topics. I've given a copy to Lindsay and to Gary as a heads up, but this will be going out to a variety of people for input, including ecology and EPA. And when we get it all back, I'll send it out again and have people rank it, which would they like to see first. And then Gary will be gone, but Lindsay will be in the loop on this. We have a lot of lead time. So if there's any formal presentations that look like they might be apt, we should have ample time to get them approved through the Washington process. But there will be a lot of people in the loop on this. And like I said, we'd like to have a really good last meeting, an informative meeting for HAB and whoever in the public would like to sit in and listen.
Thank you. Rob?
I was told I didn't have to prepare anything.
You don't have to prepare anything, but I've never known you to have lack of words.
I'm a little shy here, but I want to point out that Rob here will be running the next meeting. I won't be here. I'll be in Hawaii. And unfortunately, my brother's getting remarried after 50 years to her again, redoing their vows, and they're taking us all, the family there, and I got to give my brother away. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I got to write that thing up, and that's 2 or 3 weeks away. So anyway, as far as our meeting, we do have some issues that we're going to talk about. We have one presentation plan for the meeting. Rob Parmalee here will run the meeting, and again, we are asking for information. We have asked for information about about a number of activities, and some of them have come true, and we'll keep pressing on others. In particular, the grout has been a big issue with us. And the one thing I can say to that is I want to thank Mia that she responded with a really good, or her and Liz put together a really good discussion of their concerns about the grouting process. And I appreciate that. And I'd like to start to work on some advice somewhere around that, including those cautions that are brought out. On the other hand, I do think that there is some level of difficulties in reaching an agreement with everybody on this. So anyway, that's about it. And the meeting is on the 10th, right? 10th of May. Sure. 10th of May. And like I said, Rob will run the show. You want to say anything? No. Okay.
Richard for HSAP?
Although I'm not involved up to this point, I see that we will be having a joint meeting with PIC on the 11th. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And mostly looking at emergency management system. But on a side note, the, through the Ben Franklin Transit, we've completed the survey of employees. We got over 800 responses back on the survey. And we are poised to implement a pilot transit service to the Hanford site as soon as we can work out some minor details. So we will be, I've only been working this for 13 years.
Congratulations. Michelle, are you online? Do you want to speak for the PIC?
Sure, I'll speak for the PIC. Tracy and I had a lovely educational meeting with our federal agency staff folks to train us on how to set meeting agendas and whatnot. And as was just mentioned, there is a joint PIC and HSEP meeting on the 11th around EMS. And other than that, we are just continuing to learn as we go along.
Thank you. Rob, did you want to say something after all?
Yeah, I just, the date just hit me. I'm going to be at the DOE Enforcement Conference during that week, for the 10th. So we'll get back to everybody on what we need to do there.
You may have just solved Rob's dilemma on giving away his brother.
Your
I
trip's
don't know, Rob.
canceled.
So I think we looked back in January when I ran into this conflict, asked the idea of changing the date. And we kind of went through some iterations and, is it possible to change the date, do the next month? I know.
I don't have the power to make that
Yeah.
decision. You have to look
So
at
I
that
have
end of
my
the table.
briefers
Oh,
set
it's
to
you
come in
now.
on the 10th. Yes, we can take a look at it. However, I can't guarantee anything at this point. We're pretty close to the meeting date. We could cancel the meeting and bring the briefings to the next one, if that would work.
Or is the chair or vice chair of the board able to sit in since the chair and vice chair of the committee? I don't know. That's just an idea.
Oh, let's take that offline.
Yeah, I'll
and
talk with you, Sue,
kind of
offline, and we'll figure out
let's-
a path forward.
Yeah,
Thanks, Susan.
but no, thank you for
yeah.
bringing that up.
It-
I mean,
it-
one's getting married and the other one's getting enforced.
That's right. Okay. So just from a timing perspective, we work to get agendas out 2 weeks before meeting dates, which means the agenda for the May tank waste and
Next
public
week.
involvement and HSEP meetings are scheduled to go out next Wednesday and Thursday. So that's why you're hearing that, oh my gosh, we're running out of time. That's why you're hearing that.
Right.
But I'm glad we had the discussion.
That's right. That also means I need the input from the chairs and the vice chairs on the draft agendas I sent you, so we can get them out. Hint, hint.
Okay, so we pretty much took care of that side of the table. Does anybody else have something? Jeff, you look like you're.
Raring to go, yes. This is board business. We have a number of people leaving, including one or two that might be in this room today. Project John Price comes to mind. I think it's important to acknowledge and thank these individuals for their contribution to our work. How we do that is a good question since we don't have any money. So I would suggest the executive committee at least write a letter to them formally acknowledging and thanking them for their work.
I don't know the past precedents. Okay.
You can do a letter from the chair that the board asks you to do. So if they want you to speak for them and say thank you, that's good.
Is that a head nod? Okay.
She's already got a couple things she's got to sign next week anyway.
Thanks. Anyone else have something they would like to say for the good of the order? Okay, Chris, yes. And Tom.
Just, Mike had indicated yesterday that he'd like to say a few words at the end about his thoughts and impressions over the year he spent working with us. I just wanted to make sure we left time for him.
That's why I said short and concise.
All right, shameless plug, Oregon Hamper Cleanup Board's having a meeting in Hood River on May 8th. It's going to be fun. May 9th?
May
May 9th, May 9th, sorry. I'm traveling there on the 8th, so sorry. In Hood River, yeah. Isn't that what I said? Okay.
Just make sure you drive
The
to the
place
correct
was right,
place.
the date was wrong, I apologize.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for attending the meeting, for being so actively involved over the last 2 days in completing the cleanup advice and voting and agreeing to all the other items. I believe this is probably one of the most successful meetings we've had in quite some time. Part of it probably to be benefit that we're in person. It makes things easier to accomplish. I want to thank again, Rose, if you could pass on our thanks to Lorene and her staff. And you are part of the staff, correct? But if you could pass on, we really do appreciate the Yakima's efforts to welcome us and to show us a different way of life that is important to all of us, I believe. So if no one else has anything to say, I will turn the mic over to Mike for his farewell words.
Mic check. So point of order, Chris, it was Rob that actually asked me the question. I thank you for that, Rob. It'll be one of the questions I can definitely answer. It won't make you write it down for a delayed response. It's been almost a year. First, I'd like to thank Brian Vance, Carrie Meyer for the opportunity to serve in this capacity. I look forward to going back to my real full-time job, and I know my staff looks forward to that as well, so I can give them my full attention. Also, Gary and I have developed a camaraderie and friendship over this past year. Without your support, Gary, I mean, I came into the HAB knowing how to spell HAB, and that was it. And then I'd heard a lot of information, some of it which terrified me. Some of that came true, but we powered through the majority of it with the help of our friends that are on the HAB as well. And so thank you for all of that. And thank you to the support staff, both federal and prime contractor. There's a big machine behind making this happen and a lot of people that do it. And so every email that's sent, there's probably 10, 15 emails that's associated with that. Every request, there's a number of responses as well. It's a lot. It's important. That's why there is a lot. Also to our facilitator, Ruth, and the facilitation support staff, also to you, Dave. Yeah, I appreciate you, man, and everything you do for us, because you make this look easy, even when we have some fairly substantial challenges. And I hope that Lindsay endeavors to never make you work in 38-degree temperatures like we did previously in the hotel room in Richland. In hindsight, I should have called that meeting and said, no, in the interest of hypothermia, we're out of here. But we persevered. And I think that's a common theme that I'm very proud of with this group. We persevered. To the HAB in general, for the folks that have served that are not here, the legacy that you continue to carry forward for those of you that have served for a period of time and are still here, and for those of you that have just come on board, I want to thank you for the opportunities that you took to pull me aside and have discussions, and some of those very important discussions that we had, whether they be before meetings or after meetings. I appreciate you. I appreciate the energy that you all bring to this important activity. I'm hopeful that you'll extend that same courtesy to Lindsay moving forward. I'm confident that you will. So they're not here, but to Lorraine and Alfonso, not too long ago, I think it was probably 4 or 5 meetings ago, Lorraine extended an invitation to anyone who could break free to go out and see how the Yakima live, to see their lands, to experience some of their culture. I took them up on that, and it was a day that was very worthwhile spent. And if you ever have another opportunity like that, I highly encourage you to do it because it left some lasting impressions on me. And I'm not talking about the sturgeon farm, which is pretty cool. Uh, just their history. And I think that if you went to the events last night, you get just a taste of that. I was not able to do so, but thank you to them and their gift of their time. Finally, I think it's appropriate to express an appreciation to the legacy workers at Hanford, both those that worked in a time to produce the means to secure our nation against foreign threats, to those who have worked tirelessly to maintain the peace, and to those who continue to work to address the legacy that's associated with the cost of that effort to preserve our national security. And to those 11,000 plus, you heard Brian Vance refer to them yesterday, who go to work every day, and those who work to keep them safe. You're part of that in the feedback that you provide, the advice. And I honor those that go to work every day to do that, so that we can return that land to a better state than when we found it in our generation. So it's been a great time with you, quite frankly. Not all of it fun. There were some really challenging discussions. Election was a barn burner. There was so much going on there. So if I had to take away from that, it would be that you continue to work to ensure that you have documents that you can work to. The operating ground rules document is key. It will be important. It's important for you to recognize also that there are a lot of hands in that cookie jar that are beyond Hanford, that are back at headquarters. And I think that your vote of confidence in advancing that document today shows me just how far we've come collectively. I couldn't have imagined that on my last day that would be the gift that we would have given ourselves, that would advance, as well as the committee structures, that would advance. Those were just two things as a new guy stumbled in and said, hey, this doesn't look right. And that's why I think the benefit of the new people coming in, when I was in the service that we shared, the United States Coast Guard, I often was told that the greatest ideas can come from any level of the organization. It was typically from the person that was walking in with relatively no hair because they'd had it cut off a few months before, or they were just new, and they look at things with a different lens. And so I was able to do that. I didn't have any biases whatsoever coming in. You may not have any biases coming in, but you've had some great ideas. And so I'd encourage you to continue to nurture that and embrace that and continue to make the great progress that you have. I thank each and every one of you for the time that I had with you, and I look forward. Rob Parmalee, we still work together in some capacities, and I hope to be able to see you again. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're adjourned. Yeah.